the new Supreme Leader.
And shout out to NBC News.
Son of the former Supreme Leader, considered a hardline, expected to follow many of the same kinds of policies. But there is an inherent contradiction here that some in Iran are not comfortable with, including some members of the Iranian leadership. When the Islamic revolutionary system came into power in 1979, they overthrew the Shah, which was a hereditary monarchy. And the idea of this Islamic revolutionary system is that they would be better, not follow the Shah's example. But now what we're seeing with this new succession move is that power once again has passed, even in their own system, from father to son.
All right, Richard, thank you very much.
Well, let's get more analysis with Danny Davis. He's a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel and works at Defense Priorities and host of the Daniel Davis Deep Dive. Good to have you with us. So I want to get your reaction to what Richard was talking about there. Oil, these Israeli attacks on Iran's oil facilities and Iran then hitting others throughout the region. How big of a deal is that in the escalation of this battle?
Well, it's a huge escalation, and it's an unnecessary one because I understand that Israel and the United States have chosen to go to war against Iran, and they want to hurt them. And so you're thinking, all right, Lindsey Graham has long, for many, many months, been asking for this to go against the Iranian oil infrastructure to give them long-term harm. But the problem is they have the ability to strike back. And so you're seeing it on the screen. Richard Engel just showed it right there about that the Iran has replied in kind. There has also been some strikes against Iranian water desalination plant, which is vital in the Middle East. Then apparently Iran also struck back, I think in Bahrain, if I'm not mistaken. But every time you hit Iran with something, you're going to get a tit-for-tat kind of response, which is going to cause harm to our side. And listen, this he's not going to have any end anytime soon. And it's hard for me to see what the objective is if we just want to harm Iran, but harming ourselves in the process. I'm not sure where this leads. That's going to accomplish the goals that President Trump has set out.
Let's talk about that Iranian school bombing. It killed more than 170 people. This was back at the start of this war. Well, a U.S. official and a person familiar with the investigation here told NBC News that preliminary findings are indicating it was likely a U.S. munition that hit the school. The sources said the U.S. is still looking into whether the strikes were the result of either bad intelligence or poor targeting. Yesterday, though, the president denied U.S. responsibility. He blamed Iran instead. But how does an investigation into something like this proceed, and what could happen if it is confirmed that the U.S. was behind it?
Well, I mean, the first thing that we would do is look at our targeting data. What did we use to pick a target? What did we attack? And there have been numerous independent assessments that this area was targeted by the United States. And so then the question is, was this an errant missile? Was it an improper targeting, meaning did we think that this was actually some military target and we selected it on purpose by mistake? Or was it something that we targeted a different building, but the missile misfired and went to there instead? That's what we would need to ascertain first. But then in terms of the outcome and what it would mean, I mean, honestly, we're just being core level honest here. It's not going to make any difference on anything. Something after the fact could come to the pass, but it sure makes us look bad, whether it was a misfire or a mistargeting, because when you have that many kids killed in a tragic accident right at the beginning, that puts us in a much worse position in the public relations war that's also going on.
Let's talk about something else NBC News is reporting. That's that Russia is providing intelligence to Iran on the location of U.S. forces in the region. That's according to 4 sources who are familiar with the matter. We heard yesterday Iran's foreign minister won't confirm or deny that when he spoke with NBC News. But if it is true, I mean, what could that mean for the war?
Well, listen, I think you need to add China into that same category there, because they have actually been releasing public satellite imagery of American bases and American warships, locations where things are. And the assumption is if they're releasing that publicly, they're probably also giving classified information to Iran as well. And listen, we just have to understand with actions come counteractions and responses. Just like you have hitting oil infrastructure for oil infrastructure, when we are helping Russia's enemy in Ukraine and giving them weapons, ammunition, targeting data, which we give to the Ukrainians to kill Russians, it's not surprising at all that we get some of that in return here. And so this is one of those, things coming back to haunt you that you've been doing. And so now that's just going to make the Iranian side more effective.
Lieutenant Colonel Danny Davis, as always, thank you.
Well, this morning, President Trump is threatening Iran's newest leader, saying over the weekend they are not going to last long if they don't have his approval. This comes as the president and first lady attended a dignified transfer of 6 service members killed during the conflict with Iran. NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Haake has the latest on all this for us. Garrett, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. And look, as we enter the war's second full week, its toll is becoming all the more apparent, toll in lives and in dollars spent, and its political and economic ramifications for the country. The president commenting on all of it over the weekend, leaving open the possibility of deepening U.S. involvement on the ground in Iran. This morning, the toll of the Iran war growing. Yesterday, U.S. Central Command announced the death of a 7th service member. Over the weekend, the president and first lady paying tribute to 6 of the fallen, attending a dignified transfer at Dover Air Force Base for the Army reservists killed in Kuwait. It comes as the president is weighing whether to send ground troops into Iran.
Possible for very good reason. Have to be very good reason. And I would say if we ever did that, they would be so decimated that they wouldn't be able to fight at the ground level.
3 current and former officials with knowledge of the conversations tell NBC News Mr. Trump has discussed the idea of sending a small contingent of service members. When asked about using troops to potentially seize Iran's nuclear fuel,
We haven't gone after it, but something we could do later on.
his defense secretary saying the U.S. will go, quote, as far as we need to in order to be successful. And on American deaths, saying this.
Things like this don't happen without casualties. There will be more casualties. And no one is, I mean, especially our
And head
generation
stuff, you're a
knows what it's
fucking
like to see
asshole.
Americans come home in caskets. But that doesn't weaken us one bit. It stiffens our spine and our resolve.
Democrats accusing the administration of having an incoherent approach on Iran.
The big question is, why did we get into this war? What are our strategic objectives? Because they shift every day. And what is the plan to get out of this conflict?
While Republicans are largely cheering on the commander-in-chief.
You just wait to see what comes in the next 2 weeks.
The next 2 weeks, meaning what?
We're going to blow the hell out of these people.
The ongoing conflict proving unpopular with
And
Americans.
of course, Lindsey
And many
Graham.
worried about those higher prices at the pump. The cost of oil jumping
Dickhead.
above $100 per barrel for the first time in 4 years.
If we figured oil prices would go up, we'd say, well, they'll also come down. They'll come down very fast.
The president suggesting those price spikes are temporary, but the timeline for this conflict laid out by the president and his team suggests we're still much closer to its beginning than its end. Remember, President Trump has said he expects combat to last 4 to 5 weeks, and in that interview we showed with the defense secretary, Pete Hegseth said, quote,
You ain't gonna finish this in 4 or 5 weeks. Sorry, buddy.
Savannah?
All right, Garrett, thank you.
Communities in Oklahoma and Michigan are recovering this morning after deadly tornadoes hit the region over the weekend. Take a look at your screen. You can see some of the devastation across both states. Now forecasters are warning even more severe weather is ahead. Meteorologist Andrew Romero will have all that in a moment. But first, NBC News correspondent George Solis has the latest on some of the impact we're seeing across the region. George, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning. Yeah, this was a massive storm system that stretched from Texas all the way to the Great Lakes. We're talking tornadoes, thunderstorms, and torrential rain that really just carved a path of destruction throughout the country's heartland and left at least 8 people dead. Torrential and blinding rain pounding parts of Texas. In Rio Grande City, this gas station roof collapsing onto a car as lightning lit up the sky.
We're getting flooded in the parking lot.
The deluge flooding streets, making travel treacherous across the Gulf Coast in cities like Baton Rouge.
Oh my God. It is lifting houses.
The turbulent weather unfolding as communities in Michigan and Oklahoma began
We're
cleaning
gonna
up
go Sky
after more than a
News.
dozen confirmed tornadoes.
It's like everything.
We're gonna go to Sky News. Here we are.
That right from the beginning, that this is about balancing off those priorities in the high north, the threat posed by Russia and to an extent China up there as well, and balancing that off with the evolving situation in the Middle East. Maybe the message that we can take away from it, though, is that with the position that the military and the Navy is in at the moment, it is just really an illustration of how the military and the Navy has to cut their cloth accordingly, and that it really can't do everything.
Rob, thank you very much. Well, earlier, the Prime Minister warned that as the war continues, the chance of an impact on the British economy increases. So Keir Starmer said work is underway across government to mitigate that risk.
We've done a lot of work in the last 18 months to put some resilience in and make sure that we've got some headroom, which is basically some insurance within the economy, but also inflation is 3% and going down. So in that sense, there's more resilience. But the job of government is obviously to get ahead, to look around the corner, to work with others. And the Chancellor speaks to the Governor of the Bank of England on a daily basis. We're looking cross-departmental within government, assessing the risks, monitoring, and talking to our international partners as well about what more we can do together to reduce the likely impact on people here and businesses here, of course. But it is important to acknowledge that that work is needed because people will sense, you will sense, I think, that the longer this goes on, the more likely the potential for an impact on our economy, impact into the lives and households of everybody and every business.
Prime Minister speaking earlier. Well, our economics editor, Ed Conway, has the latest on the surging price of oil and the effect it's having on the markets.
We're still kind of trying to reckon with what the consequences of the Iran war are. And to be honest with you, every day it changes, the narrative changes, the intensity of some of the numbers we've got seems to change. We get new stories too. I mean, last week we had the closure of Ras Tanura. That's the world's single biggest oil terminal. That's in Saudi Arabia. You've got the closure of Ras Laffan, and that is the world's biggest liquefied natural gas producer. The idea that both of these places would be closed at once, before this would have just been something no one would have envisaged. And then on top of that, you've got other stories, for instance, production cuts. A production cut in Kuwait. Before there was one in Iraq as well, and then you've got a production cut just lately in Abu Dhabi as well. So that's a lot of the gas, and primarily oil, actually coming from the UAE. We'll come back to why that is in just a second. But as I say, kind of every day, the narrative shifts here. And one of the narratives, the interesting thing that we were looking at last week is, why was it that oil prices hadn't risen quite as sharply as, for instance, natural gas prices? That's showing you the change in prices of oil and gas going up to last Friday. Well, that's shifted because oil prices are up quite a bit since then. So they're up above $100 a barrel. So oil prices are up. This is as of now. Oil prices are up even more. Gas prices as well up even more. So these prices are getting higher, and the longer these stay high, the more it feeds through to what we see in terms of inflation around the world. This is that crude oil price. So over $100 a barrel. That's where the attacks began. You can see it did go up quite considerably. So we're up above $80 a barrel, but now there it is, up 43%. So up above $100 a barrel. It's actually the biggest increase that we've just seen in the last day or so in kind of 6 years. So that's oil, and that feeds through to all other parts of the economy, as does this. Natural gas, okay? So the natural gas price went up even more sharply, but now it kind of looked like maybe it was kind of settling, but now it's gone even higher. And that matters, I think, particularly for the UK economy, because we depend a lot directly on natural gas. I mean, we depend on oil as well, because that goes into petrol, kerosene, all sorts of different things. But natural gas kind of feeds into inflation really directly, because that goes into your power bills, it goes into your heating bills, not immediately, but when the energy price cap is adjusted. And that implies you're going to potentially see this lifting up inflation. Now, the Bank of England thought inflation was going to get down towards 2%. And as a result of that, so these are the bank's interest rates, currently 3.75%. As a result of the fact that it looked like it was going down, economists thought those interest rates were going to carry on going down. So at the end of February, they thought maybe another cut, maybe another couple of cuts this year. Now look at what happened after the invasion. After the invasion last week, suddenly people thought, oh, well, maybe there won't be any cuts, maybe just a bit of a cut. And look at what's happened now. So literally, the latest figures suggest instead of a cut, the Bank of England could start raising interest rates again. It's an extraordinary shift. Only, days ago, talking about a number of cuts, now potentially talking about hikes. And we have to, wait to hear from the Bank of England about what it thinks is going to happen. But just underlining the complete change that this might cause for the UK economy of these events thousands of miles away. And as you're seeing the Bank of England interest rates kind of expectations going up, so too are the interest rates that the government faces. So this is showing you UK 10-year government bond yields, which have been really quite low. And this is the interest rate that we all pay, kind of, indirectly, the public. And that has risen up very sharply. In fact, that is one of the biggest increases that we've seen in recent years. And what does that mean? It means that the government, or indeed our debt interest costs, are going up. And so all of a sudden, the public finances are under threat as well. So all sorts of different consequences. But it largely comes back to the fact that the Strait of Hormuz, which is this key energy choke point, 20% of the world's oil, about 30% of the kind of traded oil around the world, usually passes through there, and it just can't pass through there at the moment. And since it can't pass through there at the moment, you're seeing the costs, the kind of insurance cost, the freighter cost of trying to get anything through there has gone to unprecedented kind of rates. Now, I know you've seen a lot of charts that basically look like this and they spike up, but this one's definitely worth just kind of noting. This is showing you kind of freight rates for oil tankers taking stuff through those Straits of Hormuz. Look at what happens to this line when the attacks begin. And this goes back, most of these shots I've been showing you have been the past year. This goes back to 2020, and that's the pandemic around there. Previously, that was seen as one of the most volatile periods for shipping around the world. Well, that is now in pretty much unprecedented territory, underlining the fact that we are living through kind of crazy times at the moment. And the longer this goes on, the greater the impact for the world economy. It's already likely to be trickling through to our pockets. You saw that chart on interest rates a moment ago. And as I say, the narrative is shifting every day. But for the time being, those charts do look rather scary.
Scary indeed. Ed, thanks very much. Well, 9 days after the death of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran has chosen a new supreme leader. Mujtaba Khamenei is the son of the former leader who was killed in the initial US-Israeli strikes on Iran. The appointment was made by the country's 88-member Assembly of Experts, the clerical body in charge of choosing and supervising the supreme leader. Well, this is what we know about Mujtaba Khamenei. He's 56 years old. He is the second son of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was killed alongside Mujtaba's mother, wife and daughter. Until today, he's only been a mid-ranking cleric and not a senior Ayatollah. But he did serve in Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard during the country's war with Iraq in the 1980s, which means he has important connections with senior figures in the military, which may have helped his selection. In the last hour, we've seen hundreds of people gathered waving Iranian flags in Tehran in celebration of the new Ayatollah. Sky's Diana Magnay has the latest from Jerusalem.
He arguably, from scholars who study these figures, is even more hardline than his father was, which doesn't bode well for the way this war is going to go. You haven't seen him in public, and there's not much footage of him in the past. He's inherently quite a secretive figure. He held a sort of backseat role in the office of his father, but there he really did command a kind of central nexus between the militant clergy, between the Revolutionary Guard, the Basij militias, and he was responsible over the last decades for really integrating the Revolutionary Guard into all the structures of the country, into the politics, into the economics. They own large chunks of the economy, and into the security establishment. He fought in the Iran-Iraq war back in the 80s, where he developed these contacts with the key military leaders. He was very instrumental in suppressing the protests movement in 2009 all the way through to the present. So he's very much a hardline figure. And I think also worth noting that, given this interview that Yalda has done and the sort of consternation of the Gulf countries, obviously, at the way Iran is attacking them, he was a teenager fighting during the Iran-Iraq war when the Gulf countries allied themselves with Iraq against Iran and against the Shia ideology that it represented. And therefore, when you hear the Revolutionary Guard saying, you know, we will target you countries that host the United States, he will be very much part of that movement. So I don't think we're going to be seeing any kind of let-up from Iran in terms of their targeting the Gulf anytime soon. Israel, of course, has said that he is a wanted man. The United States president has said that he wouldn't be acceptable as a leader, but it's not just in the last 10 days that his name has come up as a possible successor to the previous supreme leader. It's long been discussed, will he succeed him? Not exactly a revolutionary way to succeed. I mean, you're meant to be appointed by this clerical body. It shouldn't be from father to son as it was during the monarchy, which, you know, the revolution came along after. But we shall have to see how long he lasts and whether he dares to raise his head above the parapet, given the threats against his life from the United States and Israel.
Dana Magnay there. Well, let's take you to Lebanon now. These are live pictures from Beirut, where smoke is continuing to drift across the city after the Israeli military says it hit infrastructure belonging to Hezbollah. Well, let's cross from Lebanon down to the Gulf. Our correspondent Sally Lockwood has the latest on the situation in Dubai.
We continue to see ongoing strikes on Gulf states, and they are not limited to military infrastructure, as was initially feared. They have been widespread, random, and have been impacting civilian areas across the Gulf. We've had more warnings this morning in Abu Dhabi of missiles, and 2 people have been injured there by falling shrapnel after that attack was intercepted. The authorities here confirming that a Jordanian national and an Egyptian national have been injured in Abu Dhabi this morning, and that comes after residential areas of Dubai were hit over the weekend, including Dubai International Airport. One Pakistani taxi driver was killed by falling shrapnel after an interception, and that's the 4th death so far here in the UAE due to this war. 2 deaths were reported in Saudi yesterday after ongoing strikes and attacks there, and 32 people were injured in a drone attack in Bahrain, including children who require major surgery, according to officials. And another worrying development from Bahrain, a desalination plant has reportedly been targeted and hit in this latest wave of attacks over the weekend by Iran. There's been no response so far by Tehran, but there was also another concerning report yesterday in the Israeli media that the UAE had hit a desalination plant in Iran, something the UAE came out quickly to say they hadn't been involved in. That was completely false. It was fake reporting, but certainly that was concerning for 2 reasons. One is that Gulf states at the moment are trying to resist getting involved militarily. They haven't ruled it out yet, but they do not want to escalate this any further. You've seen what's happened to Gulf states in the last 9 to 10 days. They do not want Iran to have any reason to try and strike them even harder than they have already. But this report of a desalination plant being hit in Bahrain is particularly concerning because it is absolutely critical domestic infrastructure here. This is a very water-scarce region. Gulf states are reliant on desalination plants for their drinking water. 42% of the drinking water in the UAE comes from those plants, and up to 90% for the likes of Kuwait. Now, we've also been talking about the Strait of Hormuz and the concerns around there, that very narrow waterway between here and Iran, which effectively is closed at the moment, not officially, but due to the security reasons. I mean, we can see just out to sea here a number of vessels just static in the sea because the Strait of Hormuz is essentially closed for safe passage. And that's not just affecting the flow of energy out of this region to the rest of the world. Around 20% of the world's crude oil goes through the Strait of Hormuz, but it's also an absolutely critical entry point for a lot of food imports. 80 to 90% of food in Gulf states is imported, and while they do have food stockpiled at the moment, the Strait of Hormuz is certainly a very concerning focus for this region. And what they don't want to see is desalination plants become a target in this war, and for water scarcity and water security to become an issue as well.
Sally Lockwood there. Let's just bring you a bit of information coming from President Trump. Now, this is about the Iranian women's football team who are currently in Australia. There's been some speculation about whether or not they should go back to Iran. 5 members of the team have left the team's training camp and successfully sought refuge in Australia after fears that they could face dire consequences on their return to the country. This is because they didn't sing along to the national anthem at one point during their stay in Australia. Well, President Trump has waded in now, saying Australia is making a terrible humanitarian mistake by allowing Iran's national women's soccer team to be forced back to Iran. He says they will most likely be killed. Don't do it, Mr. Prime Minister. Give asylum. The US will take them if you won't, and then finishing with thank you for your attention in this matter. So President Trump urging Australia to make the Iranian national women's soccer team to give them asylum in Australia. That's the latest from him. As soon as we get any response from Australia, we will let you know. Meanwhile, the King, Queen and other senior royals are attending a Commonwealth Day service at Westminster Abbey this afternoon. It's the first significant public meeting of senior royals since Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's arrest, and comes as some in the Commonwealth called for his removal from the line of succession. Our royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills has the very latest.
It's always seen as a really important annual event, but this is still a difficult time for the royal family. And while this isn't the first time that we've seen members of the family out and about since Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's arrest, it is being seen as a really significant day because it's the first time we're going to see the King, the Queen and the Prince and Princess of Wales alongside each other. It's not surprising that they would want to come out for an event like this. The Commonwealth is hugely important to them. They're carrying on a tradition really set up by Queen Elizabeth II. The King is still head of the Commonwealth, but there is no doubt that it's still slightly complex in terms of these engagements now, and I can show you why, because if we look over here, you can see that there is a gathering of anti-monarchy protesters, probably around 40 people, it has to be said, very similar numbers turned out last year, and they've, over the last few months, been carrying out their own kind of protests about the Epstein files and Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. So as the 1800 congregation arrive for this service, and especially the royal family arrive for this service, they will have to head past those protests. They ultimately won't be able to miss them. For the King, of course, he has said really clearly that he wants to focus on engagements like this. But the issue is the constant distractions keep coming, and recently in the last day we have had more images that have been released from the Epstein files. We can show you 2 of them now. The man in those 2 images resembles Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. We know they've come from that latest release of the Epstein files. We also know that being in those files does not immediately indicate any kind of wrongdoing, and also that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has vehemently denied any allegations against him. But of course it again draws attention back onto all of the discussion around those Epstein files and Andrew's inclusion in those. Also for the Commonwealth as well, it's an issue because you have to remember there is still discussion about Andrew being removed from the line of succession. Keir Starmer has said that he's looking at potential legislation to do that, but in order to for it to happen, other Commonwealth members also have to sign up as well. We know that Australia, New Zealand and Canada have already said that they would back that move. We're now waiting for the other Commonwealth realms to also step in and say how they feel about it. The King and members of the royal family are meeting up with various members of the Commonwealth delegations who are heading here for this service. Publicly, I think it's unlikely they'll discuss the Andrew issue, but privately, it is still one that's there very much in the background. And I think for the royal family, it shows that the bigger problem here is that this continues to be a world issue, a real global issue, and the focus on the Epstein files continues to be huge.
Brandon Mills there. You're watching Sky News today. Coming up, the very latest from Glasgow, where the central station could remain closed for at least 2 days, as this devastating fire in a neighbouring building is still being brought under control. Now, a fire at a vape shop in Glasgow has forced the closure of Scotland's busiest railway station. Emergency services were...
Doesn't confirm tornadoes.
It's like everything you worked so hard for. Gone.
So they hacked up a genius plan to finish off the air defenses. The US launched hundreds of drone decoys. What are they? Well, these are tiny drones that are programmed to look exactly like giant F-15 fighter jets on the radar systems. The Iranian defenders panicked when they saw this swarm of giant planes and fired their expensive surface-to-air missiles at these ghosts. Not only did that dwindle their supply, this revealed the exact location of every Iranian radar and missile battery, which the US and Israel then promptly destroyed. I mean, it's genius. But this was just the beginning, because the most impressive part of the logistics was what is actually known as time on target, which was step 3. To effectively take out the targets, they needed incredible levels of coordination to ensure the attacks all happened at the exact same time. The US and Israel coordinated strikes from thousands of miles apart. Ships in the Mediterranean, carriers in the Arabian Sea, US bases across the Gulf countries, and of course, jets from Israel. They all needed to act in perfect coordination, and the math of this is incomprehensible. They calculated the travel time of every single weapon so that hundreds of missiles and bombs hit their targets at the exact same second. Over 200 aircrafts, perfectly timed. The result speaks for itself. This caused systematic shock. The entire military command of Iran essentially crashed because they were being hit in every major city like Tehran and Isfahan simultaneously. And for step 4, we have the strikes themselves, with America and Israel working in tandem for maximum impact. There were a few goals for this preemptive strike to ensure that the Islamic Republic was sent into disarray before it started. The leadership, air defense, and firing abilities were the main targets of this first wave of attacks. And with each country having different military abilities, they divided and conquered. The US focused on the military bases and factories, but Israel's primary mission was Operation Genesis, targeting the leadership. They focused on the district in Tehran where the government lives. The reason that Saturday was chosen for the beginning of the war was due to the intelligence Israel had collected that the heads of the Islamic regime would be gathering for meetings to discuss their plans, and this included Khamenei. Although this hasn't been 100% clarified, it sounds that a big part of the reason for the diplomatic discussions between the US and Iran was to create access to intel about the leadership, so they could target them if the time came. And boy oh boy, how it came. You already know how successful it was. The Supreme Leader's compound was completely destroyed, and him and other family members were successfully taken out, as was the defense minister and over 40 of the army's top regime generals. It couldn't have been more successful. Khamenei is now gone, and as of this moment, we are hearing reports that his planned successors have also been eliminated. According to the IDF, all senior terrorist leaders of Iran's axis of terror have been eliminated. I repeat, all of them have been eliminated. Think of the shock to the Islamic regime. In a matter of minutes, almost the entire chain of command is wiped out, which leads to chaos and inability to effectively act. But even with that being the case, the Islamic Republic have launched an incredible counterattack. But we will get to that in a second. The US, meanwhile, is taking out more and more new.
If this is it. Hold on.
We'll come back to you. Let's go to the Iranian foreign minister who is giving a press conference.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, together with the entire diplomatic corps within the Islamic Republic of Iran and beyond, renew their pledge to continue to follow the directives of the leader of the nation to the best interest of our nation and to achieve the objectives of our foreign policy. Now, if you allow me, I will not have an introduction or any briefing statement. I will open the floor directly to questions. The President of the United States spoke about changing the geography of Iran by the end of the war. In a statement made by him a few days ago, he is going in line with the Zionist entities' enterprise to partition our country. How is the foreign ministry considering this issue? What is really realistic and what defines the shape of our nation is the will of our people. The US president has been speaking about many issues with regards to a number of world states from Canada and beyond. He had a number of diverse opinions, and governments of the world have come to realize that the US president is dealing as if he is handling a real property transaction. For us, each and every state has its own border, and these border lines are expressive of the extension of their nation's civilizations. The Iranian people are proud of their geography and they are prepared to sacrifice their lives to safeguard and defend our home soil. Iran has always been and will always be a graveyard of the enemies. The Iranian people are fully aware and prepared to defend their home soil. Other states or other peoples did not realize the realities on the ground, and they have. And if Iran is defragmented or partitioned, the consequences will be extremely dire. The international law as well as the international charters are now in jeopardy. So all free men worldwide who are concerned with the world peace should consider what is taking place. Any indifference or inaction will have dire consequences on the entire world. A question about the election and selection of our third supreme leader. And after my congratulations and following the statement made by the U.S. officials on the partitioning of Iran and taking control of oil resources, there are a number of reactions, and many believe that Iran will continue to fight until they teach a lesson to the belligerent enemies. And any ceasefire will be serving their agenda. There is no doubt about the designs and objectives of the United States, namely to take illegal and unlawful control of our oil resources. If they were capable of doing so, and if they believe they will be able to seize control of our oil together with that of Venezuela, now they will be in control of 31% of the whole world's oil resources. They have openly stated that they have been engaged in this war to serve Israel. And therefore, the objectives of the United States behind their war on Iran have all come clear to our people. They have come clear and obvious to our people. All our efforts are centered on defending our home soil, defending our territories in the face of these brutal and ferocious attacks by the enemies. And I believe we have all realized and learned from past experience that the belligerent confrontations between the United States and America go back beyond the 70s of the last century, at a time where Iran were struggling to break free of the shackles of the imperial forces. The cooperation by the United States with the collaborators who betrayed Iran have caused a great deal of instability, and our people have come to realize that the diplomatic course was torpedoed by the United States, and they waged a war on Iran while we were fully engaged in diplomatic discourse. Therefore, we are all one hand and one voice defending our country.
Thank you for the opportunity. With your permission, I will raise my question in English and then provide the Farsi translation for my fellow colleagues. While the US officials, particularly the US president, consistently use phrases like helping the people of Iran, Iran will have a great future, let's make Iran great again, and phrases like that to justify their actions against Iran. Recently, some of their statements have given pause for thought. For example, the US president's remarks suggesting that in his view, Iran's map after the war will not look the way it does today. Using terms that suits the US government best, such as evil, to describe the Iranian nation.
The Iranian people as evil. I believe your question is clear. You can repeat it in Farsi. The US officials reiterate the same statement that they are doing this in order to lend a helping hand to the Iranian people, and they are justifying their actions, some related to changing the map of Iran, which will not be the same after this war. They also describe the Iranian people as evil. This is not something new. History has it that they have been manipulating, describing, or labeling the Iranian people as terrorists or evil. And if you even ask young children, they are fully aware of these facts. However, our observers and analysts can provide the suitable response. Children in Minab and Lamerd and Fars and Tehran and other areas, they have come under attack. The Americans and the Israelis are not only attacking schools and civilian facilities, but they also attacked oil installations. Is this an act meant to help the Iranian people? These are shameful acts. They assaulted the school, and they alleged that they will investigate the matter. With these shameful acts, it is a living proof that they are accustomed to killing innocent civilians, and they are not even living up to the responsibility. They are evading responsibility. It is clear that this war is a war between a party seeking to wreak killing, destruction, against a state and a people who are acting with dignity to defend their sovereignty and territorial integrity.
وزیر جنگ آمریکا در مسابقه با اظهارات وقیحانه مدعی شده تنها کسانی که باید نگران
The U.S. Secretary of War stated that those who should concern are the Iranian people.
یعنی کشتار ایرانیان را آشکار کرد. واکنش دستگاه دیپلماسی
It has come clear that they are seeking simply to wreak killing among the Iranian people. This is quite clear, and I have responded to this matter previously. Many issues are quite clear. They are even too clear to ask about. These facts are now established before the eyes of the Iranian people. In their assault on Iran, they do not distinguish between any ethnicity or group. Even the description and the labels they are putting on the Iranian people all reflect their objectives. All the statements made by them are meant to demonize Iran and the Iranian people. They described the Iranian people as evil. They are paving the way in order to manipulate and influence the public opinion and to dodge the responsibility for their actions. This, per se, constitutes a full-fledged crime. It is also an expressive of their genuine design and enterprise to perpetrate crimes. These are all living proofs to not only to the Iranian people, but to the regional and global populations. Their actions are not limited to Iran, but they go beyond to other countries and other states. What Iran is doing now is to proudly and with steadfastness defending its sovereignty and territories. They have violated all the international laws, norms, and practices, which have been forged after great efforts made by many over the past years. The U.S. Secretary of War stated that during the 12-day war, Washington was able to destroy all Iran's military capabilities. Based on this presumption, together with theirs on the nuclear facilities, how do you respond? I have stated earlier that their design is clear, their enterprise is quite obvious. They aim at partitioning our country to take illegal possession of our oil riches. Even before the U.S. and Zionist entities' belligerent acts started, we were fully engaged in diplomatic efforts and many rounds of talks. They are doing all they can in order to provide justification to their crimes. Their objective is to violate our sovereignty, defeat our people, and undermine our humanity. All these facts are quite clear, and we do not have to elaborate. On the very first day, they targeted the residential area of the Supreme Leader, where he, together with a number of military leaders, were killed. After that, they assaulted Al-Minab school, killing innocent students. Also, on the first day of their assault, the total number of innocent women and children was extremely high. And they continue to falsely allege that they targeted and killed military personnel. Again, their objective is to destroy our country and our nations. But make no mistake, with our fortitude and bravery, their objective cannot be achieved. Recently, a number of media reports were circulated that Iran assaulted Cyprus, Azerbaijan, and Turkey. However, the Iranian armed forces stated that they had no objective targets in these countries. We also heard that Azerbaijan are about to close down their diplomatic mission in Iran. How do you think this will have an impact on the public opinion within the region? And did they provide any documents in relation to this issue to Iran? We have been repeatedly reiterating to the regional countries and neighboring states that we are adamant to maintain good and friendly relations. Therefore, communication will continue to be exchanged with these countries based on mutual respect and also respect to sovereignty, namely at this particular point of time, especially if we are assaulted from these countries, as the regional countries' home soil are used to launch attacks against Iran. We, under the international laws, have all the right to defend ourselves, and our act of defense cannot be interpreted as an act of hostility against any of these countries, namely Cyprus, Turkey, and Azerbaijan, the one you named in your question. We have openly and candidly stated that no offensives were initiated from Iran territories. Even some British officials confirmed this fact. However, we have warned repeatedly that the enemy may stage certain attacks in order to drive a wedge between us and other countries. They may raise a false flag or stage attacks in order to implicate Iran. In 1954, you may recall how the Zionist entity carried out an act of sabotage with an aim to drive a wedge between Iran and a number of states. Recently, we have come to know that they also attempted to carry out acts of terrorism in Saudi Arabia and Qatar with an aim to throw these acts on Iran. There is no doubt all these acts will have a negative impact on relations. However, our president had a telephone communication with the president of Azerbaijan, during which he reiterated that this offensive was not initiated from Iran's territory. Again, we are adamant to maintain good and friendly ties with our neighbors. At the same time, the neighboring countries should understand our position. Equally enough, again, we will respond to all the territories from which attacks against Iran originate. The neighboring countries have come to realize that the U.S. military bases did not bring them any peace. So what is your message to these countries in this respect? Let me start by answering the first part of your question. Once again, I believe this matter is also clear. During the past few days, it has come clear that the presence of the military, the U.S. military in the region was never a reason for peace or stability within the region. On the contrary, it is a direct cause of insecurity, instability, and above all, disputes among the regional countries. History will remember that during the holy month of Ramadan, many of the neighboring Arab and Muslim countries, their territories were used to initiate attacks against an Islamic country, which is Iran. Some turn a blind eye to the United States turn a blind eye to the interest of these countries. All what they are aiming to achieve is to serve the interest of the Zionist entity without any respect to the stability or security of these countries, the regional countries. And I hope that those countries have learned the lesson. At the same time, we request the neighboring countries not to allow their territories to be used by the United States or the Zionist entity to initiate any assault on Iran. Our request is very much established under the international laws and charters, where if a particular country or state allowed their home soil to be used to initiate an attack against a third country, according to the international law and charters, we have all the lawful rights to defend ourselves. Russia has presented a draft resolution to the Security Council in which many details are centered on ending the war and starting negotiations. Our friends in Russia, together with our representatives in the Security Council, are following on with respect to this matter. However, there is a very bitter fact, which is the United Nations, the Secretary General of the organization, have failed to live up to their responsibilities. In this particular case, where a direct belligerent military act was initiated against a peaceful country, they should have started by identifying the belligerent perpetrator and hold them to account. However, regretfully, they did not. This is a living proof that the United Nations is reeling under the brunt of the U.S. and Israel. And we have, over the past few years, that many of the international organizations and the rules have been undermined. And with the absence of these responsibilities, the Islamic Republic of Iran will continue to practice our lawful right in a more steadfast and adamant fashion. Mr. Arakci stated that currently there are a number of mediators engaged in talks about a ceasefire. Who are those officials and what are your terms for a ceasefire? I believe his statement was not circulated in an accurate matter. You should go back to this particular media report in order to understand the true content. In the face of this belligerent aggression, we have the right to defend ourselves. We did not initiate or start this war. It is not a war of choice. It was a war of necessity, which was imposed on us. And we have no alternative but to resist and defend against the unlawful act of aggression and the belligerence initiated by the United States and Israel. Therefore, all our efforts are directed and our resources channeled towards defending Iran. And as we speak, the military confrontations are still underway. And at this particular point, speaking of any other matter other than defending our homeland is irrelevant. Yesterday, a telephone call was made between the Iranian president and his French counterpart. And do you have any details? The communications and correspondence taking place at this time that are all centered on the ongoing war. Many states are expressing their concern and fears. However, these concerns vary. Are they concerned about Iran and the Iranians, or are they concerned about their own citizens? Iran and the Iranians have come under direct act of belligerence, and we are defending our homeland. Other countries are concerned about oil prices or the scarcity of goods and commodities. This does not mean they shouldn't be concerned about the oil prices, but France is one of the permanent members of the United Nations, and over the past few years, France has not lived up to their responsibilities in the most suitable fashion. Many of the European countries, I regret to say, have contributed to this, and instead of adhering and upholding the international laws and steering away from the dictated orders by the United States, be it in the United Nations or elsewhere, even with respect to the re-imposition of sanctions. They have acted hand in hand with the United States and the Zionist entities in Gaza, Lebanon, and Syria, and we have all witnessed what took place in Lebanon. Ultimately, any country claiming to be seeking international peace, they should live up to their responsibilities, abide by and uphold the international laws and charters, and act genuinely towards achieving all these objectives, starting by identifying the belligerent party and holding them to account. We have all witnessed how the Iranian naval asset was attacked near off the Sri Lankan waters, despite the fact that it was not engaged in the ongoing war. This act constitutes a full-fledged war crime simply because this warship was not part of the military operations taking place.
I'm going to go ahead and cut this off right here. Thank y'all for being here. Like, share, subscribe. I'll see y'all later. Peace.